All right, guys, we're back for our third installment in our beard butter series, and we're going to look at the consistencies. Now, do you guys like poured butter or whipped butter, or does it matter? What's the difference? Are there things in between? I got some things to show you, so stay tuned. Hey guys, Brian Haywood here. Welcome back to my Beards and Banjos YouTube channel, where we do talk about all things bearded. We do product reviews and style advice and vlogs and special series like this one, where we've got 12 different unscented beard butters, and we're doing just a little series of videos. We've talked about price. All right, we've done that. What was the second thing we did? Oh, we broke down the ingredients, and that one took me a while too to figure out how to do the spreadsheet and kind of show that to you guys in a good way to show all the different butters and oils, carrier oils that are used. And I've been putting this video off too, just to be honest, because we're going to look at the consistencies. And to do that for 12 butters, it's going to take a little bit of time. So I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to do it. But when you think about consistency, you got whipped versus poured. What's the difference? Well, the ones that have a little bit of beeswax in it, some of those poured butters, they have like what a lot of people call a body to it. So it's a little bit more weighty. It can give you a little bit more styling control on that, maybe last a little bit longer. And then the whipped, if it's super whipped, a lot of people think of those as light. They go in easily. They absorb easier. They don't give you a residual, any kind of greasiness or oiliness on your beard. So which one's better? That's personal preference. But for me, as I'm looking at all of these butters and all the ones I've gotten previously, there are a lot of things in the middle. So for me, and I'm going to show you what I mean, we've got what I consider whipped, just being kind of the light and fluffy. You can kind of get it out with a forward finger and get it out that way. And then you've got the poured ones, which are definitely poured. They have a little bit of body to it. And then there's a whole lot in between where they're said to be whipped. I think they're more like they're mixed, they're blended, but it's not whipped and put a whole bunch of air into it. These are like dense blocks of things that, yes, they were whipped. I don't know how they whip them because it's so dense anyway. Have to have a pretty strong whipper to do that. To me, I think we need the word blended, so I've heard some people say it's packed. So yes, it's whipped, but it's like really packed in there and it's denser. So we've got density. Does that make a difference? Well, it does when you're working with it, right? I think the other thing that makes a huge difference is like the moisture content, because some are just made out of a lot of butters and a little bit of oil, and they seem to be a little bit harder to work with. They're kind of firmer. This takes just a little while, especially in colder weather. You kind of get out a hunk of it and you just kind of have to wait till it melts like you would a little stick of butter, if you will. So let me see what I can do about showing these off a little bit, and then we'll see if we can organize them in some form or fashion. But let's show them to you and then see how we can fit this together and wrap it up, all right? All right, so we've got 5 butters that are whipped, and the other 7 are poured blends, I do believe. So I want to do the whipped butters first. So kind of the lightest of all of them is the Bearded Pup. All right, and that's it's got a medium amount of moisture content to it, but it's pretty light and fluffy. You can get it to come out with a forward finger instead of having to go back against the thumbnail, and it breaks down very easily. No grit, and in fact, none of the whipped or blended butters have any grittiness to them at all. So next up is Beard Justice, and this is kind of the second lightest of them. In fact, it may be the lightest. This one, and here's the issue with a whipped butter, especially during the summertime, is it's settled a little bit, so a little bit of melting going on, but it still comes out very easily. This one might have just a little bit more moisture content to it, but these are probably the 2 easiest ones to work with out of the whipped butters. Next up, we've got Damn Yankee, and that one is whipped, but it's got just a little bit more density to it than the other 2. And you see the white color on that, but it can still come out with a forward finger and really smooth works very well. You know, I'm not going to belabor the point here, because we had to go through 12 of these, and I know the camera doesn't show everything, but that one is Damn Yankee. So next up, we've got Iowa Beard Company, and this one is another whipped butter, and it's got a little bit more density. Now we'll get into the ones where you start to push my finger in it. It gives some pretty good resistance, but you can still get it out with a forward finger, and it's almost like like one that's been poured, but you've got no grittiness to it because it's been whipped together. So that's Iowa Beard Company. Last up for the whipped butters. This one's a little bit different. This one's special. I don't know if we can see this, if the camera probably won't focus, but it does say extra thick. So it says moisturizing extra thick, THICC, and yeah, she's thick. I'm pushing. My finger will not go down through that hardly at all. All right, so you can't really get it out with a forward finger. Nothing comes out. So you kind of have to scrape it out like you do a balm. And people say, "Oh, that's just like a balm." It's not, because it's a butter, right? So once it melts down, it's not really going to give you any hold to it. It doesn't feel any heavier on my beard than any of the other whipped butters, for whatever reason. That actually works really, really well. So that one is Wanted Maine, extra thick. And that's the end of the whipped blends that I know of. I may have missed one of the other ones, but I do believe all these other ones are poured in some fashion. All right, we're going to go with this Artius Man. It's the easiest to work with, and I don't know, there's some sort of magic in this thing. I don't know if you saw my review on it or not. But it's got a lot of moisture content to it. And it just comes right out almost like a really thick pudding, or not lotion, but maybe super thick lotion. No grit in it whatsoever. I think I don't think you would ever have any grit in it for some reason. It's so micro blended or whatever that it is super creamy. The interesting part is it actually gives you a lot of body to it once you start melting it down, and once you start putting it in your beard, it gives you a lot of hold to it. So that's the Artius Man butter. Several of these are really unique, this being one of them. So next up, we've got Furry Hippie, and this one, you can see it's got a little bit more color to it because of the ingredients, but this one is kind of your traditional poured butter, pretty high moisture content, really easy to work with. I feel just a little bit of like micro grit in it, but nothing bad. It doesn't have big huge clumps and get stuck in between your fingers or anything like that, but I can feel a little bit in there when I first get it out, and then when I start rubbing it together, it goes away. But it's pretty easy to work with, and a good high moisture content always helps that. So that was Furry Hippie. So next up, we've got Defined, and I think I'm right that this is a poured butter. It may be whipped. It's kind of hard to tell on this one. I may have to look that up. Anyway, little bit harder. It's my finger. If I get some resistance, my finger does go down in there, but it's a little bit slower. Not as gritty, so very smooth. That one works very well, easy to work with. So that was Defined. Next up, we got the Bearded Mack. So this one is a little bit smoother, and no grit whatsoever in it. So that one works very well. All of these work well, guys. It's just, I thought I'd show you as best I could these consistencies and really talk about the kind of the in-between, a pure, highly whipped butter with lots of air in it, and then the ones that are more, the ingredients are blended, but it still has that density to it. So that one was Bearded Mack. Next up is Whiskey N Hardtack. They're full-body butter. They are also making whipped butters now. So they're coming back in season. This one's a little bit thicker than the Bearded Mack, a little bit thicker. but still smooth, no grit to it whatsoever. But I can see how the denser these types of butters are, the more that you're going to have some styling to your beard, right? It's going to kind of weigh it down just a little bit more. All right, but all of these are great butters. This one was whiskey and hardtack. So next up we've got Barden, and it is a poured butter. Sometimes and these come from Canada, so sometimes they're gritty, and I don't have any trouble melting these down and popping them in the freezer. I do that sometimes with balms or butters, but this is in the glass containers. You don't have to, it's a lot easier to do than if it's in a metal can, or if it's one of those plastic containers that aren't microwave safe. It becomes kind of a chore to do that. So I can't remember if I did it with this one or not. Seems like I may have, because I kind of see stuff up on the edge. But anyway, it came out super smooth now, regardless on how it came to me. And like I said, I don't remember some of the stuff from Adam. I melt down and some I didn't. But very smooth now, works great. Kind of the same consistency as the Bearded Mack and the whiskey and hardtack. It's got some good density to it. All right. Last up, we've got Fable. And this one, if you remember the ingredients, this one is the one that's all butters, and it's gritty. I can't ever get rid of that. Well, I can get rid of the grit, but it takes a while, and you kind of have to, it goes and hides between your fingers, and it becomes aggravating, and sometimes you get the little chunks in your beard. So not my favorite butter. And I've tried melting it down, and it still has the grit in it. Not as bad as when it came. But anyway, I know a lot of people like that, and it feels great in the beard, but not my favorite one to work with. We'll just put it that way. Performance-wise, it's great, but not my favorite to work with. Just a little bit gritty because it's all butters, and it takes an extra little effort to get every little piece melted down, because they like to hide in between my fingertips. Anyway, that's all of them. Let's do a wrap up. So I'm curious if you guys agree with me that we need a category in between whipped and poured. We need like a blended. What do you think that might do? I think that might keep it from getting the little separation, and it's not really grittiness necessarily, unless it's got some really hard kind of butters in it. And some of the butters ingredients are a little harder than others, but I think that it helps with that. So I like the idea of the mixing and the blending. I've never had one that's like that has been gritty. The only ones I've had that are kind of gritty, and then you get little bitty pieces here. You got to have to work in between your fingers and all of that. And those are with the poured butter. So I like the idea of the mixing or the blending, but that's a little different when it's really dense than when it's super duper light, like you saw for a couple of those. So anyway, let me know in the comments if you agree or not, and which one do you prefer? Do you like the whip? Do you like the ones that are poured? Do you like the stuff in between that's kind of blended or mixed with the ingredients? So hopefully you found this interesting. I found it interesting as I thought about doing this. Anyway, next time we'll sniff them here and see which one is the most unscented, if you will, and kind of compare that to the ingredients that might be in it that we did in video 2, and see if we can come up with any kind of correlation between that. All right. As always, guys, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next video.